So earlier this year, I said that the Vaporfly Next Percent 2 was going to be my race day shoe for this entire year. However, I wasn't aware the Vaporfly Next Percent 3 was going to come out. And after trying both shoes out and, going through my daily routines in them and attempting races in them, has my opinion changed? Let's compare and contrast both shoes and let's find out which one is the better race day shoe. So before we get into it, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel if you're already subscribed watching this content. Thanks so much. Love you guys a lot. Make sure you follow me on Instagram and Strava for all sorts of other updates and things like that. So without further ado, let's begin. So actually it's got to be like this, right? It's got to be like this. So we have the outsides of the shoes facing you. Specs right here for each shoe respectively. What you'll probably notice right off the rip as we're comparing them spec-wise is that the stack heights for the shoes are exactly the same. We do have this, again, this 40 millimeter heel in both shoes, 32 millimeter in the forefoot, giving us an offset about 8 millimeters. It's a high stack height race day shoe. Both ways. The only major difference is going to be across the weight. So it's all scaled across, but in my weight, in 8.5, this shoe is about 6.7 ounces, puts it at approximately 189 grams on average, whereas this one is 6.5 ounces, about 180 grams average. So the Vaporfly Next Percent 3 is just a smidgen lighter as a shoe, but all things considered, that's a big difference, right? We're talking, these 0.2 margins are a big deal when it comes to your race day shoe with this kind of stack height, with this kind of build, materials involved and things like that. And that's where we start running into our comparing and contrasting points, right? As most of us already know, this shoe, the Vaporfly Next Percent 2, does emulate a lot of features from the Vaporfly Next Percent 1, minus the upper of the shoe, right? Like that previous rendition of the shoe had more of a kind of, not as webbed as this shoe, was more locked down and basically had a nice strong upper that we can use for your runs that was essentially protecting you from a lot of the elements. Whereas here, I guess in an effort to reduce the weight, they changed a lot of the upper and the textile materials involved with the Vaporfly Next Percent 2, made it more breathable, made the water flow of the shoe, if you were absorbing, fluids, a lot easier. Not perfect, but, a lot better than it was before. And we were presented with this, a shoe that geometrically is a lot more round, has some sharp pieces to it, and has kind of like, essentially a nice panache to it with the way the foam of the shoe and the stack height all work together in tandem to provide you, the racer/runner, a nice daily racing shoe or your race day shoe as well, because you can use this for training, and I don't suggest you do unless you have the budget to do so or the strength in your ankles to do so, because the shoe does give you quite a beating as it is, right? That's going to be important as we move into the Vaporfly Next Percent 3, this shoe right here. So I deem this shoe in my Strava lineup as the Silver Arrows, just kind of resembling the Mercedes-Benz Formula 1 racing team. I don't know, there was just a color scheme that kind of worked with it, and I thought, hey, that's cool, looks like it. But again, same deal here as before. We got a 40 millimeter in the heel, 32 in the forefoot, 8 millimeter offset stack height, 6.5 grams. Where has the weight been lost? I think from normal observation, there's going to be two places I'm going to look. That's going to be the upper and in the foam areas as well. So right off the rip, I think the material in the upper is obviously different. It looks like it's using this a similar style to the Alphafly, not nearly as like burnt or heat treated as it was, but it does resemble more of, again, this circular pattern on the upper of the shoe that in a way kind of reminds me of the inside of like a swimsuit liner or like swim trunks liners. So fellas, you know what I'm talking about. That's kind of what this reminds me of. It's not that material, I don't think. That'd be crazy if it was. But again, it's got super breathability in the toe box. It's got a lot of open space all across the shoe, similar to the Vaporfly Next Percent 2, just a little bit more, I think, in this case. It doesn't have so much of an inside sock, nor did the Vaporfly Next Percent 2 in this particular case. I digress. Point here is that there's a lot of good features in this thing, and there's some weight lost, I think, with the material that's used on the upper. Now, the overall geometry of the shoe seems to be more blocky than it was in this shoe, where this one had more of a round feel to it. There's more of a block, kind of square, geometric, raw, CNC style 3D printing, I guess, aesthetic to the shoe. So they want to keep it more raw, perhaps, and more square, I guess, perhaps as well. And I guess we were debating this in some of my other videos of like how the shoe is more designed for, I guess, larger runners as we go along, but I don't know if that's the case. But again, it does have more of a block geometric shape, as you can tell, right? Like we've got this design in the heel, we've got this cutoff piece right here in the heel, so as you see it, it's cut off right there. I think some weight is lost by cutting that piece of foam off the shoe. I think some weight is lost in this area that's supposed to be this nice like geometric piece. It can all add up enough where I think the shoe has lost weight in certain pieces that may or may not be more supportive in this case. I think this particular area will be something to question as we move forward. Let me see. Anything else that's kind of interesting? I guess the overall design of the shoe is strange as well. Whereas here, like, this is one little detail I'm noticing right now, is that when the upper textile meets the foam, it's more or less like folded inside and glued in to the shoe this way, or like treated in this sort of particular fashion. So if we could line it up right there, perhaps, maybe it's visible here. That's the way the shoe is kind of designed. It's folded in, whereas the overall textile here, you can kind of see where it's being glued almost directly to the foam in this kind of area. I almost like see where the material is barely sticking out. I kind of see where some of the glue is. So that's something, again, interesting that I'm noticing with the Vaporfly Next Percent 3 at this point. Is it a cheaper style build? It could be. I won't blame Nike for attempting to make manufacturing costs cheaper, but again, if it affects the overall performance of the shoe, then you as a company should step back and be like, all right, let's get the quality of the shoe perfect to the customer before we find ways to cheapen it out. That's just my take. And again, I've seen it with their Tempo Next Percent models. I've seen it with their Alpha Fly renditions. I've had videos comparing my two models there. I digress. Point here is we got another thing that I'm going to question between both shoes, which is the rides. And that's probably the part you're also concerned about too. It's like, does the Vaporfly Next Percent 3 feel faster? Does it ride better? Is it a better shoe than the Vaporfly Next Percent 2? And my answer there is that it depends. This is what I mean. I've had, let me think, at least 3 or 4 pairs of the Vaporfly Next Percent 2 already in my lineup since 2021, I believe. Is that when this shoe came out, or is it 2020? I think it was 2021, because I had the sky blue version of this shoe, and I think I sold it off. But anyways, point is, this shoe's ride is very similar to the Vaporfly Next Percent 1, minus the fact that the upper kind of gives it some disadvantages depending on your overall ride. The shoe ride and the way the shoe is kind of built has this rounded kind of build, which allows for, again, a little more marginal, I guess, impact here and there. It's not nearly as stiff of a shoe as something like the Alpha Fly, where that rounding is really contingent to the amount of pressure you put in your air pods of the shoe. But the point here is that the shoe had a lot of space to basically give you some wiggle room, I guess you can say, when you were running, to have impact points across the shoe. So you can see where it's like rounded in the Zoom X foam area as it meets the rubber. You can see it's sort of rounded when we have this area right here in the heel. If you're more that heel striker, that midfoot area, you have this big block of rubber as well in the midfoot to forefoot area of the shoe that you can utilize to burn as you will. And I burn as I have. It's just like, though that area of the shoe has always been burning, it's just something I've seen for the last 3-4 years of having this model shoe in my lineup, and it's just something, again, used to just running with as a normal basis thing. We've got the same old wear here in the heel area where the rubber here is in pretty good shape, but the foam is kind of burning in that particular area. So I'm used to this particular design of the rubber being a little bit more rounded, having more material to work with in that rubber structure, and the foam kind of just wearing as it does. Now, with the Vaporfly Next Percent 3, There's a whole geometric design change that's going on with this shoe that has me asking a lot of questions. First and foremost, they put a much larger rubber plate on this particular midfoot, forefoot area, but it's also following a different design. And with the different design, it's got kind of a lug structure, as you can see. The lugs are not massive, but it's worth noting that they are there. Another thing to notice is that the foam layer overall, or not the foam layer, the rubber layer is significantly thinner than it was on the Vaporfly Next Percent 2. So this was something I questioned in my first impressions video with the shoe, is that based on how much rubber is on the shoe and the lug structures and things like that that exist on this shoe, how long is this shoe going to last? Is it going to last 150 miles, 200 miles, maximum 250 plus miles? I just don't know at this point in time, and I'm really curious about exploring it because, again, it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of rubber here to work with, and that's got me kind of concerned that the point of this shoe is just going to be like 2-3 races of marathon distance, and then you just kind of recycle them, and that's kind of what happens. So it's just something I've observed at this point in time, that this material may not last nearly as long as I would like it to, okay? Also, same thing in the heel area, right? As you can kind of compare in the burning of the heel areas, there's a bit of rubber here at least to protect the heels. Here, I don't think there's any at all. It's just straight foam all the way across. This might be like some rubber plates, but the point is I'm like having burn right there in that area, and you can see it's kind of just like chopping away like something's biting it, which again, not a massive concern right now, but it is just something I have observed at this point. Again, I don't worry too much about what's going on in the heel. I just want to make sure that if I am burning it down, it doesn't turn the stack height into like a lower offset as we're going. I don't want to be like burning it off and reducing the heel stack in that kind of sense, right? And then the last thing in regards to the ride is because there is like less rubber material on this, and the ride of the shoe feels a lot more square, a lot more aggressive, and I will say a lot faster than the Vaporfly Next Percent 2. There's one massive caveat with this shoe, and it's the overall, in my experience here, it's the support that this shoe provides. And I'll give you the anecdotal example. Maybe I was just having a bad day with the shoe, or just a bad day physically, who knows. Like, as I mentioned in one of my other videos, I have like an ankle, I guess like tendonitis or like sore point or some kind of scar tissue that's giving me some like soreness in the ankle that I'm trying to aggressively work off right now, right? When I was trying to run in this shoe, the soreness was like pretty significant to the point where I couldn't even do like a post-bike run in this particular shoe. So at that point, it was kind of a discouraging thing that, you know, the shoe is so aggressive that even after like a bike ride in a triathlon simulation, I couldn't run. Like, could you imagine on like race day if I had like similar soreness and I laced up the shoe and I was ready to go, I had a good swim, good bike, and next thing you know, I can't run because the shoe just doesn't have enough material to support my foot, right? If that were to happen, like, this would be a bad race day shoe for a triathlon. It could be a bad race day shoe for a marathon even. Like, what if you wake up that day and your ankles are sore and you need some time to warm up and you're just not getting the warm up in this shoe? And by the time you're laced up in this thing, ready to go, it's just a bad day for you from the start of the race. Like, that's something that's in the back of my mind right now as I am training for the Chicago Marathon for the 7th time, or is it 6th time? One of the two. It's just something that's in the back of my mind as I am training for that marathon, that it's possible that this might not be my race day shoe for that particular race. I will continue trying to get into this shoe into the right shape, put in the volume, the mileage, and strengthen my legs once more because they have been kind of slacking this entire season. But I do want to really get into this shoe by the time the Chicago Marathon rolls around. But until then, like, the Vaporfly Next Percent 2 is probably the better running shoe for me at this point in time. But don't get it mistaken, right? Like, whoops, there it goes. Don't get it wrong. Like, in perfect conditions, I think this is the faster shoe and should be your race day shoe. But in my current condition, like, the Vaporfly Next Percent 2 is the shoe I'm going to continue working with until my body's at like 100%. So, yeah, that's our general summary here. I guess the point then is that it's going to depend, again, once again, on your type of running technique, where you are in your marathon training or half marathon training plan, how or which shoe you're going to pick in terms of running, and which one you want to use for like daily work, which one you want to use for strictly race day, your tempo workouts. It's going to really depend on you. But again, my personal take on it is I want the Vaporfly Next Percent 3 to be that shoe, but I'm not physically ready for it yet. So if you agree or disagree with this assessment, let me know in the comments below. But yeah, I will leave this video here for you guys to discuss and think about. And yeah, it's a cool shoe. I like this shoe. It's just I need to be ready for it, and my ankle is just not cooperating with me the way I would like it to. And I'm having a slow marathon season, especially in the month of July. Like, I should be already doing more distance work than I already am. So maybe once I'm in better condition, I'll be able to lace this thing up and like have the motivation to run like 17, 18 miles a day in this particular thing. Who knows? So without further ado, I'll leave this video here. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.